want to share with you before the interview is something a little bit more personal that really surprised me going into this interview. So, prior to the interview starting, prior to the recording starting, and right before I hopped on the call with Heather, I was having a very human moment, a moment we all have. I was feeling a little bit sorry for myself about a few setbacks that have happened, in my professional life, disappointments. I'm navigating some personal stress at the moment, and I was kind of sitting with it. It felt a bit heavy. I was allowing it, put it aside, hopped on my call with Heather to talk about her journey from, her near death experience to becoming a pet psychic all these years later. But before we got started, before we hit record off camera, she had her deck of cards, which she uses with her pet readings, her dog oracle card pack, and she had picked one for me right when we hopped on the call, and it was I remember it was I don't know if the card said faith or it was faith, but the first thing she said was, "Oh, like here's a message for you. It's about having faith in yourself and having faith in your endeavors." And it kind of took me aback because it was really, really spot on for what I was navigating precisely in that moment. But then things got even more interesting because, as you will hear during this conversation, my dog Maxie, who passed away 4 years ago, came through with a message for me, which was so on point and really spoke to some of the disappointments and feelings I'd been having that I never voiced to Heather. Like the first thing she picked, I didn't even respond to it. I was like, "Oh, thank you for that." And then Maxie came through with a very similar message. It was a little more in depth without prompting. So, quite a fascinating conversation I had with Heather, and I hope you enjoy it too. She even has a message out there for a particular person who might have lost a pet at the age of 13. If that's you, please be in touch. And finally, before I get started, I just want to let all of my audience know that I do have a free Substack community. I have the links in my show notes. I have the links at the end of this call. And my Substack community is a publication where I publish a lot about the things I talk about on this podcast. There's also a paid membership community, which is $10 a month or even less if you pay for a year up front. And that community is really for those who are interested in the material of this podcast, the multidimensionality, but more than that, are seeking a community of people who are looking to bring together the inner work and the outer work in the world and make contact each other, sit together in circle, tend to our nervous systems together, be part of a community essentially. So if you're interested, please check it out in my show notes. And if you have any questions, you can contact me through Substack. All right, let's get started with this conversation. Welcome to the Shattering Place podcast, Heather.
Thank you so much for having me here. I've been looking forward to this ever since we first had our conversation.
Yeah, that was a great conversation. Heather is, she's an author of several novels. Having had the conversation with you and obviously reading a bit about you, I just love to jump into a conversation and hear a bit about your story because I understand that, you've had this career writing novels for several years now, I guess. 7
Mhm.
novels, I think it is, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. But you've also had a really big near-death experience in 2014 that feels like it's
Mm.
changed the direction of your life entirely. So I thought we would jump in and if you wouldn't mind sharing a bit about, your hero's journey and what's been happening and how it's changed you. And, I'll hop in if I have any questions, but your story is so great that, why not just start there?
Okay. Well, thank you again for having me here. And, it is interesting because I am one of 6 kids.
Whew.
And of all 6 of us, I was the one born with a congenital heart defect. So I was born without the
Oh,
pulmonary valve.
oh,
That was back in 1965 where, doctors didn't know what to do with me really. They handed me over to my parents and said, come in once a year for an appointment. And we lived in Connecticut, so just outside New York City. Every year, my mom and I train into New York City and go to Cornell Medical where I would have my appointments. And finally, when I was 9 years old, they said to my parents, "We have this new method where we put in a pig's valve." So I had my first open
Mm.
heart surgery that year, the fall of '74. And I remember I wasn't allowed to go trick or treating. So my sister dressed up as an old lady and did trick or treating for me, which was really sweet of her.
Cute.
But um, that was when I realized, even at that young age of 9 years old, that, like, wait a minute, why me out of all the students? Because back then, you
Yeah.
didn't hear about these things. So
Mm.
why me? Then at 25 years old, I had my second open heart surgery because the original pig's valve, which, by the way, I didn't know when I was young that came from a real pig. I was reading a
Oh.
Danielle Steele novel, and it had a pediatric cardiologist in there, and he was talking about the pig's valve and the pig it came from or whatever, and I was like, "Wait, what, mom?"
There's a pig in
So,
me.
anyway, so it turns out that pigs have valves that are very close, to the human function one. So,
Mm.
anyway, by 25, that valve had started to calcify, and it had actually
Oh,
broke a record. Most people's pig's valve only lasted 5 to 10 years, and mine lasted
wow.
16 years. So apparently I'm
Mm.
in record books for that.
Mm.
So at 25, I had the second one, and that surgery was obviously different than when you're 9, because I was
Mm.
a grown
Yeah.
adult with a career and living out in California. So I went to UCSF for that surgery. They put in a stent instead of another valve.
Mm.
Then at 49 years old, I'm at home one morning and I get out of the shower and my heart rate just catapults to 247
Oh,
beats per minute,
oh my gosh.
which
Mm.
obviously is 4 beats per second. So I had
Yeah.
no idea what was going on. Even though I grew up with this heart condition, I didn't know at all what was going on. I never experienced anything like that. And I lay down on the bed and the king size bed is shaking, and that's when I knew it was not good. So, um, my phone was out in the kitchen and,
Mm.
back this is 11 years ago. So this is back when we had like Nokia flip phones, it wasn't smartphones where you could say, "Hey Siri, call 911."
Yeah, yeah.
And hopefully, so I go into what ended up being tachycardia, and it dropped really low to the 30s. And I was like, okay, my normal resting heart rate's in the 50s, so I know I can at least function at 30 better than 257. So I get
Yeah.
up and I go to the kitchen and call 911, and I ended up in the emergency room, of course, about half an hour, 45 minutes later, because I didn't live close to the hospital.
Yeah.
And they said, "You're in tachycardia. We're going to have to use the paddles on you to reset the rhythm. We're going to give you amnesia drugs so you don't remember it." I'm like, okay. So next thing I know, like, I'm out. The last thing I heard before I was out was the nurse saying her heart is shaking, is beating so hard the bed is shaking. And I
Oh my
went to
gosh.
say something about happening at home too. And the next thing I'm just out. So I wake up and that's when they told me, we had to use the paddles. And you were like, had I not been athletic and fit and doing all the hiking and everything that I did with my dogs, he said, there's no way you would have survived this.
Wow.
So I ended up at home on PICC line, like they use for cancer, the little port that they put usually in your
Mhm.
arm, sometime in your chest, on those antibiotics for 8 weeks. And then following that, they said, "You need another open heart surgery,"
Oh,
because they had taken the stent out and there was nothing there. So all I had was just regular flow. Like there was no valve to regulate, in other words. So through that, because there was no valve, think about a hose,
mm,
and water just shooting through a hose and
mm.
not having anything to regulate it. One of my heart's chambers expanded. And the surgeon, before my surgery, because after the antibiotics, I needed open heart surgery. And the surgeon said, one of your chambers is big. And I said, oh, well, that'll go back to normal after surgery, right? He's like, oh, no, 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 that never happens. So, well, it turns out one of my dear friends back then, Jolly, was an energy healer. So I went to see her when the antibiotics ended, and I had a month between the antibiotics ending and the pending open heart surgery. So I went to
Yeah.
see her, and she put me on her crystal bed. So it had these really big crystals. They're like, they were literally like this big, and one for each color of the chakras. So I lay on that, and she closed the door and put on some, high vibration music. And during that time on the bed, I got all these visions of my future. And I wasn't expecting that. I had been to intuitives before, but I had never really tapped into my own intuition. And
Yeah.
that's when I realized that my near-death experience kind of catapulted me to this next level of dimension and understanding.
Yeah.
So it was really crazy. So from the energy healing on that bed, fast forward to, the open heart surgery obviously went well, although at 49 years old, you don't recover as fast as you do when you're 25, let alone 9. But I got through it. And in my follow-up CAT scan, the cardiac CAT scan that I had with the surgeon, he's like, come here, look at this, look at this. I'm like, what? He said, your heart's chamber, it went back to normal size. That never happens.
Wow.
And I said, well, you've never operated on me before. I mean, I didn't know what else to say to the guy. Poor
Yeah. I'm
doctor.
not a statistic, FYI. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I couldn't say to him, well, my energy healing friend, put me on her crystal bed. But I knew that that was why, because there was no other
No
explanation
reason.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so in the years following, that intuition that I had on that, for everything that I saw on that bed came to true
Yeah.
fruition. And then even more, it started developing, especially in the last 2 to 3 years. I started getting
Wow.
downloads. I've always had a connection to dogs, especially,
Yeah.
and I start I started going to intuitive circle groups, especially one in Florida that was in person. And the things that were coming through to me that first, well, usually like around the second or third night, because the first night I was kind of just taking it all in and seeing if it was something, that I would be comfortable with. And
Yeah.
come to find out after a few weeks of going, my intuition was really strong and the things I was picking
Yeah.
up really connected. And then I joined by somebody in that group recommended an online group. So I started doing that. And in there, I started picking up on people's pets. And we were doing a mediumship activity, and everybody's describing a person that they saw, like somebody's grandmother or
Yeah.
father or
Yeah.
whoever. And I'm totally describing this little chihuahua, like nipping at my
I
ankle.
love it.
And I was like, where is this coming? I'm like, they're all going to think I'm crazy. Well, one of the girls in the group, Kelsey, is like, wait, that's my dog Baby who passed away last year. And I was like, whoa, wait, really?
Oh.
So then they started private messaging me, can you tap into this dog? I'm like, send me a picture and I'll see what I can, connect with. And sure enough, a lot of what I was picking up, was true or came to fruition. But it wasn't just animals who had passed over. What happened was a lot of people had animals who were not feeling well or not doing well, and they would start to reach out to me. Well, after my open heart surgery, I moved to Boise, Idaho, and don't ask me why. No good reason. But while there, my yellow lab fell deathly ill, and he was at the vet hospital being operated
Mhm.
on. And Jolly, the same friend who had given me the energy healing session, she gifted me an intuitive reading with a friend of hers, Steve. So I'm talking to Steve while my dog's basically on the operating table. And he couldn't tell me or wouldn't tell me what the outcome would be, even though I knew in my heart. I wanted to hear it, and I was on some level, I understood that's not news that you want to give somebody as an intuitive reader, and I understand that and I respect that. But I was also really disappointed. So now, fast forward to now, 10 years later, I'm able to do that for people. And that has been the greatest gift of my near death experience is being able to, it's not returning a favor, it's kind of like returning my own favor and trusting that what I got back then was true, even though he wouldn't tell me. But now I'm able to give that gift to other people. So,
Yeah. Clarity, certainty. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And just, I don't like giving people false hope for things. So, one of the gals in that same group, her beautiful dog, he was so handsome. I just love this dog. She sent me his picture and said, what are you getting from him? And somewhere in the reading, I got the number 2. And this was in December 2025. I got the number 2. And I was like, I don't think he's going to pass in like 2 days or 2 weeks. I feel more like it's 2 months, that you're still going to have time with him to enjoy him and
Yeah.
spoil him, before the next phase for him. And we kept in touch a little bit. We became Facebook friends, so I could see that. Sure enough, he was doing okay. He ended up having his leg amputated, but he bounced back and was doing quite well. Then in February, which is also a 2, but 2 months later from the reading, he took a sudden turn and ended up passing away. And, it breaks my heart to see these dogs, going through what they're going through, but at the same time, giving Carrie the message I was able to give her brought her a lot of comfort, and
Yeah.
when the time came, it wasn't caught off guard and she could prepare for it, even though you're never fully prepared for losing a pet. And, so, and I've had other people reach out with similar, situations. There was one gal in the group who had taken on her mother's dog when her mother passed away 2 years earlier. And by now the dog's 17. And I said, well, I see, I think her name was Bella. I said, I see Bella like wandering around at night. And she said, yeah, she doesn't sleep well. She gets up in the middle of the night and paces. And they had already scheduled her to be euthanized that in a few days. And they just wanted confirmation that it was okay. And I said, your mother is there waiting for her. It is definitely her time. She's making room for other dogs because her sister also cared for the dog. Said she's making room for other pets who are coming in. I'm seeing a black and white male dog. Well, sure enough, her sister had just adopted a black and white male puppy and the sister female. So I said, Bella's making way. I said, the only request your mom has is that you wrap her in either a blanket that was your mom's or a shirt or something that smells like her. So, and I've never had anybody tell me, I mean, I have 3 dogs right now and I've had 6 others. So I've had my fair share, and knock on wood, thank God, I've been blessed to be with them, every single one of them when they passed over. And I would not want it any other way. But I've never had that like idea. So that truly was such a strong message for me and for anybody else going through that, to
Yeah.
find something dog to give them comfort. And but she messaged me after and said, your reading was just gave us all the confidence and the comfort that we needed, knowing that she was going to be reunited with their mother, and they were
Oh,
making the
beautiful.
decision.
Yeah. So, for whatever reason, you just are just tuned into the animal channel, particularly dogs. Ever cats ever, or any other animals, or mostly dogs?
Yeah, definitely other animals. And what's crazy is I did another podcast a few weeks ago, and people were uploading pictures of their pets, and 80% of them were cats. And I was like, "Okay, this is gonna be a really good challenge because I usually people reach out to me about their dogs because they know that I'm like literally, my license plate on my car is dog." So, partly because it's God spelled backwards, but, for the obvious reason, but also because it's God spelled backwards. And, so with these cats, though, it was really interesting, like, one lady I was looking at her cat, and I said it had passed away, and I said, "It rides in the car with you when you're out driving because that's the only time it can get one-on-one time with you." And she said, "That's crazy because that's the only cat I ever had that actually liked riding in the car." So,
Wow,
it was
wow. Yeah,
yeah.
that's nuts. We had a dog who, he we weren't with him when he passed away. He ran away on a full moon in the middle of the night, and we know that he was sick and that was his time, but we never found him, and, yeah, that was hard, but yeah, I know he's around, but then we got a kitten to be a companion to our other cat, so and then we adopted another cat, so then we went from a dog and a cat to a dog and to 3 cats, basically, so we definitely you definitely have it all.
Your dog who passed away, I feel like sometimes they don't want the person going through it, just like people, they
Yeah,
don't. Especially if it's obviously the soul contract and how they're meant to pass. Some dogs are more like cats, like, a lot of times cats will wander off,
yeah.
and I do find that the tuxedo cats are more like dogs. So they're more likely to want you to be around, but more the tabby cats and those want the privacy in their passing, or they don't want you to feel it. I mean, when my yellow lab passed, I felt his spirit rush through me. I feel like with your dog, male,
Yeah.
just yeah, that especially being a male, they tend to be more that way too, even though I have 2 male dogs. But with yours, I feel like he needed to be in, like, a wooded area. Did you have woods around you?
Mm.
Yeah, he wasn't too far, no more than half a mile away when he
Yeah,
passed,
yeah.
and his spirit went pretty quickly, so he wasn't in I don't feel like he was in a lot of pain or discomfort at that time, even though he
Mm.
may have been leading up to it.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a farewell that morning. It was really interesting. Like I
Oh,
or before I went to bed, I wrapped myself around him and I said, "I love you so much, Maxie. You're the best dog ever and I just want you to know, that you're the best dog in the whole world." I used to tell him.
mhm.
And I just wrapped my whole body around his little body and I knew he was sick and weird thing is I kept taking him to the vet and they were like, "No, no, all his tests are fine." I'm like, "He's constantly got diarrhea. I'm washing him all the time." And they're like, "No, no, he's fine." And I didn't believe it, but I could tell he was having trouble. And I just wrapped myself around him. And then, and then, I remember it was a full moon and he barked at maybe a bird or something and he ran out. And then that was it, but we knew that it was his time. But yeah, loved that dog.
Right when you said full moon, I have a deck that I showed you earlier called the Divine Dog,
Yeah.
and I literally just pulled the actual wonder card with the full moon. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
out of this whole
Yeah.
deck,
The whole
I
deck, that's
literally,
the
as you were
card.
I pulled this, so there he is with the full moon. So that is to me, that's complete confirmation with what I told you earlier, and anticipate awesomeness. That's you and your career and where you're headed with this and your podcasts and everything. He's definitely a guide for you for that. So even though I read pets, a lot of times it's is for, their owners, and he's very much a guide for you.
I Well, he died a few years ago. We
Yeah.
actually I mean, totally in the just the way of life, right? Like, right after I met you, our senior cat died pretty suddenly. She had a heart condition, so we knew it was coming, but I was actually on a call with a client, and I was getting these urgent messages that she seized, and my daughter and I took her to the vet. This was only 3 weeks ago. It's a
Oh,
beautiful, beautiful creature. So yeah, so
did,
that's really raw.
did she have orange on her?
Yeah, she was a big fluffy, actually Norwegian forest cat. Big
Oh,
fluffy
cool.
cat. Yeah, and she was quite devoted
Yeah.
to me, she was with me all the time. Often when I'd have Zoom clients at home, she'd be behind me.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so she will be now when you're on Zooms, like, you you'll feel her energy. It's like my spirit guide, I had a hypnotherapy session with actually the guy who ran the Intuitive Circle in Florida. I had a hypnotherapy session with him, and that's how I met my spirit guide, and
Mm.
he Samuel, and he talks like Sean Connery and looks a little like Sean Connery, and he's always, like, right here over my right shoulder. But
Oh.
when he came through in the session, my old black lab, Lexi, who had passed away, um, a few years in 2021, the fall of 2021, my husband and I owned a campground up in New Hampshire, and that was her last summer with us. But she came through with him, and I
Mm.
found that so, because I got all choked up when she was there, and even the guy, Walter, doing the hypnotherapy session got choked up because he could feel it from me. But that was my confirmation that it was real, that he brought her through. But it also showed me the animal connection again, you know? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
knowing that your cat will always be over your shoulder during these sessions.
I totally believe that. So there are a few things I want to ask you, and that is, I would love to go back to that moment when you're in the crystal healing bed and you're starting to see visions of your future. Were they visions of doing, this kind of more psychic spiritual work? Is that kind of what you were seeing, or was it more general? And did you believe it? Like, were you like, "Oh, okay, this makes sense," or was it like a total shock to you?
It was a shock to me, and it's interesting because 4 months later when I had that reading with Steve, he was telling me about, here my dog is dying, and he's telling me about, this man I'm going to meet and that it would be a forever love. And now, mind you, I didn't get married till I was 53 years old, and here I am, 49, saying, "Steve, I wanna talk about my dog," and I
Yeah,
felt like he
yeah,
was
yeah.
just diverting to talk about this. Well, I didn't really realize that just 4 months earlier when I was on that crystal bed, the visions I had were actually of my future husband.
Oh, wow.
Now, between us, we've had several dogs, so it kinda made sense, but, like, it was almost like watching a preview of a film coming up. So in one vision, he was standing over the surgeon during my open heart surgery, which was coming up in another month from that time. And he was standing over the surgeon and all the, nurses and whatnot, making sure that they were doing a good job with the open heart surgery, which clearly they did. And then in another vision, I was in an apartment with a bunch of boxes packed, and
Wow.
I was getting ready to move in with him or something, and it was a holiday Monday, and U-Haul wasn't open. It was crazy, but I was in an apartment with all these packed boxes. Then the next vision, we're out riding bikes together, and then the next vision, he was proposing to me on one knee, and he's 6'7". And I said to him in the vision, "You're so tall, even on one knee, like, you're still up here to," 5'8". I'm not short, I'm 5'8". But so it was all these, like, visions going forward, like, they weren't mixed up, they were definitely a path. So after the
Wow.
surgery, and then when I met him and all these events started happening, I was like, "Oh, wow, that's crazy." So when the last one, when he proposed, That was the one I waited the longest for to happen. So, but, it was just total confirmation that being on the bed, those visions were so accurate. But it's interesting because it never happened again. I was on that crystal bed a few more times before my friend Jolly passed away, and, somebody else got the bed from her, but never did I have that kind of experience on it again. So it was really interesting that it was right after the near-death experience before my open heart surgery. But when I
Yeah.
met my husband, he was pretty open to going to intuitives and talking to intuitives, which allowed me the freedom to really tap into my gift. And And I lived
And
in a condo when I met
mm,
him, and sure enough, about 5 months later, I moved closer to him, so there was the condo with all the boxes packed up, and we moved several times since then, but, you know, and then the riding bikes, we were
excellent.
doing a lot of cycling then, and now we own a cabin in Western North Carolina mountains with a
Beautiful.
180-degree mountain, and it's beautiful here. And I'm actually in our cabin next door that we bought that is a retreat for writers and artists to come and stay here. So this is Next Chapter's retreat that we operate, which was always a dream of mine to have a writer's retreat.
So I love it. You have a writer's retreat. I'm gonna come to your writer's retreat. I love North Carolina. I've been many, many times. Beautiful part of the world. Is that near Asheville?
We're 2 hours south of Asheville, right on the
I
Tennessee-Georgia corner.
Yeah, I know it. I know it. I know it. I love it. I mean, those are such incredibly specific precognitive visions, and it really makes me, I come back to this idea of time not existing at some level, and to see that you're on a path, it's like that's coming for you. You can't avoid it. That is just your path. It kind of it really brings up for me this thing between um where are the parts of our lives we have free will and can make choices, and where are the parts that are kind of like this is the script. And maybe the answer to that is, well, we agree to the script. I mean, who wouldn't want that script? You're lying there and you're seeing visions of like future love and companionship. But I wonder if you
Mm.
had any thoughts about that. That's just what was coming. Did you resist it? Was it enticing?
It was enticing, and I when I got off the bed, because it's you're on, like, a massage table under the lights, and when I got off and went out to the living room where Jolly was waiting, I started telling her, and she's like, "I know, I saw the same thing." I was like, "Really?" So
What?
everything I was seeing because she was very intuitive as well. So we went to lunch and talked about it all, and it I was just in a place of, I just came off 8 weeks of recovering from a near-death experience to now facing my 3rd open heart surgery, which is another 8 weeks of recovering. Like, you can't
Oh,
drive
yeah.
for 8 weeks because sternum, with when they go through and the steering wheel, they don't want you driving because they want you to heal as straight as possible. So,
Mm.
and being very single at the time with just my 2 dogs, I relied heavily on my friends, I was living in Charlottesville, Virginia at the time, and they just completely came through for me, but it just wasn't something I could wrap my head around. And with recovering from the surgery, then I'm like, "All right, I'm moving to Boise," that
Yeah.
March. So, I had the surgery, so this is crazy. I had the surgery on January 5th of 2015. In December of 2018, we were engaged by then. I had met Steven and all, and we were engaged, and we went to our priest because we got married in the church, and then we also had a beach wedding. And we told our priest that the beach wedding was going to be January 19th down in Florida, and that was also my grandfather's birthday. And the priest said, "Oh, well, you have to get married in the church before you do your beach wedding. How about January 5th?" So there it was crazy that 5
It's
years to the
crazy.
day, married on the same day I had my 3rd open heart surgery, so that was pretty crazy. But,
Wow.
what him, I was like, "Okay, this now I can see the visions and how they came true," but I didn't tell him about them until they started happening,
Yeah.
because some of those things you can't force, but
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
tell,
You're gonna propose to me, you know?
"You're
He's
gonna
like,
propose
"I
to
just
me,"
met you last week." Yeah.
yeah, I know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I was very patient with it as it unfolded because we met in the fall of 2015 and we didn't get married till 2019 and engaged until July of 2018, right before my birthday. So we were up in Camden, Maine. Actually, no, we were in Maine on the coast there, and he proposed there. And then the next 2 summers later, we spent the whole summer up there, which was wonderful.
Yeah.
But it's I didn't. It's the kind of thing that you make note of, and which I did. And, as it came true, because I was not in any place between those 2 situations, the near death experience and pending
Yeah.
open heart surgery, like, that was the furthest thing from my mind. Who was gonna
It's
take care of my dogs,
yeah.
while I'm in the hospital was my biggest
Yeah.
concern because
Yeah.
they were the world.
Yeah. It's comforting to know that there's a plan for you, and then that must mean there's a plan for everyone, and it kind of can help you kind of just I know for me, whenever I've had little precognitions, it's like I kind of can kind of relax just a little bit because you're like, okay, well, these things are going to happen. I don't have to effort. There is I am being led or I am being drawn or there's something, that's meant for me, so that's so
Yeah,
fascinating and interesting also, I think that because you were already writing and publishing and when you had your
yeah,
last right. So I mean, I'm a writer as well, and I'm sure you have this experience. Often feel like I mean, I know that when you're doing creative work, you are opening to other energies, and you are opening I mean, my perception is like through the crown chakra, you're bringing information in. It's not just a personal endeavor, it's a co-creative endeavor with consciousness, you know? So it's a good
yeah.
foundation, I guess I'm not surprised you have that background. So to me, what it says is probably your whole life you've been preparing for this. You've been opening to those whatever. You've been opening to that consciousness through your writing, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. Writing the novels that I've written, it felt like a lot of them were just being channeled. And
Yeah.
interestingly enough, things that I would write in the novel actually came to fruition later as well. So
Mm.
I learned that be very careful. So the hero's journey type, when they're facing adversity, even though I had
Yeah.
already faced a lot of adversity in my life and then overcame it to be to where I am now, I was kind of a little hesitant to write any more novels and putting my characters through adversity because a lot of what happened in them started happening to me. So it was interesting. But have you had that happen with your
I
novel
I
at
I
all?
did. Well, I wrote 3 unpublished novels before my recent one, Ikona, which I published myself, and the very first novel I don't know if I've even told this story, but the very first novel I started writing this isn't one of the 3 because this one I chucked, but I started when I was, 18 and I first went away to college, and I started writing a story about a woman who meets an archaeologist and moves to Australia to find the meaning of life. That was the kind of like shorthand. And for various reasons, I mean, it was my first attempt. I was 18. I ditched it. But my ex-husband was an archaeologist, and I met him in England, but he was from Australia, and we moved to Australia. The whole
See?
story was just crazy. I look back and I go, I can't like this is the craziest thing ever. Like it was just so specific, you know? So I was really
Yeah.
aware of that. And then I mean lots of various things, but most notably, in my novel Icona, which I think I sent you a copy of, the it has a future, it has different eras kind of organized in an interesting structure, but the future part of it, so there's a present and then there's a past in Siberia and then there's a future in a kind of post-apocalyptic kind of thing, but the part of this thing that happens in the future is that there's this virus that goes through and it has all these consequences, and there's all this kind of mystery with vaccines and pharmaceuticals, and I wrote that before COVID, like at least 2 years before COVID, and like if you were to read it, you would go, "Oh, she's clearly writing," because I published it after COVID. Anyone would think, "Oh, she's referencing that." But I wrote all that before COVID. So it's crazy,
So that brings
cr
up a really good point. Like with me and my novels and with you and that, are we writing what we already know is coming? I mean, certainly you weren't what you wrote wasn't, creating the future. It's more like you were tapping into what you knew was coming. So that's, and I wondered that when I wrote my books, like, was I writing what I knew was going to happen and I thought I was being creative, but it was really the plan all along? So,
Yeah. Yeah, I my understanding is that there are different timelines or different possibilities, and I think with my novel, I've picked up on one really specific timeline, and it's creatively fictionalized, and there are things that happen for the sake of the story, but it does feel like there is a reality to it that I can't quite put my finger on, and so it's crazy so it feels really congruent for me that that you're writing and your experience like I do. I experience it. It's like I'm channeling a lot of material. That's the writing. And I'm just the instrument that can do that. Like I've developed those skills. So I'm the right instrument for that information. But then and also
right.
like my day job is therapeutic work and I do normal sessions, but I also do body work, and there are a lot of other experiences, a lot of consciousness experiences. I get messages from people who've passed over. I see medically sometimes things that are happening. So it feels all very aligned, the creative and the intuitive. Which leads me to my next question is I'm really curious about this piece of the animal stuff that you do. Can animals then become our spirit guides? And what does that look like? Like, are they just hanging around loving us or sending us messages? Like what? Yeah. What
Yeah,
happens?
it's so much more than that. Yes, they're there for comfort, but I think they also help to make ways for, paths for us as well. Because in some ways we have such a unique connection with them, and there are certain things that only they could really set up for us. And I'll
Mm.
tell you when I really first started realizing I was so connected to my dogs, my first dog as an adult was also a black and white dog, and after she passed away, I was out on a bike ride, riding out in the country roads, and this is about 4 or 5 months after she passed, and I envisioned that she was running alongside me. I'm
Mm.
on the bike, she's in the field next to me running, and it just felt so right that she was there.
Mm.
Well, the next car to pass me was a pickup truck, and it had the license plate Paw Paw 4. I mean, if that's not confirmation that she wasn't with me, I don't know what I don't know what is. So, that's when I realized, okay, they really are there with us after they pass. And I've also heard that from other intuitives that they will reincarnate as our dogs later in the future. So your dog could come back to you. Max could come back later. Most
Oh.
likely, I feel like he's more likely going to come back to your daughter when she's an adult. Um, but the 2 dogs I had next, Julie and Stefan, who were with me during my near-death experience, I had an intuitive tell me that they were actually 2 of my childhood dogs that reincarnated. And so that was very comforting to know that they'll do that. There's actually a movie, A Dog's Purpose,
I've seen it.
about the
I just
soul of
cried the whole way through it though.
Bruce Cameron, who wrote the book, is fabulous. I interviewed him actually on a radio show that I used to do years ago. But I just love that because it does, knowing that when they passed away, that they could come back to me later gave me
Mm.
hope, to have that connection again. And so that I've been able to tell clients, this certain pet will be coming back to you. There was one lady whose cat was really connected to her son because when during the reading I said, I feel like he's there for one of your kids. And sure enough, he was. And another reading, I felt like the dog was very much for the daughter. Usually there's a strong connection to the mother because they're the ones feeding and walking and really caring for them. But
That's me.
often I
Yeah.
get that they're for the kid, and
Yeah.
sure enough, the child that I saw with this dog that was just wandered onto their property one day, said, "She's there for your kids." Well, sure enough, her older daughter is autistic and just
Oh,
absolutely loves the dog, and she's learning responsibility through it and all that. But so I feel like when they are, and I do connect with a lot of animals who are here with us. So it's not just the ones who have passed over. But I do know that when they pass, it's because it's a critical point in time where something big is going to change. So
absolutely.
when my
Yeah.
yellow lab Steph did end up passing that May, he was Stephan, and he passed away in May. I met Stephen, my husband, from those same guy as all the visions, and he was Stephen. So it was really crazy that my dog ended up having the same name, just different little bit spelling, of my future husband. And to me, that was just even more confirmation. But, back to
Mm,
your question about, they are there to send us messages and they really want you to be aware of them. Like if you have a new cat that's looking at the wall a lot, they are likely seeing your cat who passed away, who will
mm,
kind of toy with them. So, being aware of those, not everybody is open and aware to that, but the pet is there regardless, and they will help. A lot of times they're helping to make way for the next pet to come in.
yeah. Could I show you
Yeah,
a
yeah,
photo of Bridget because she only just passed away a few weeks ago. So
yeah.
we are really missing her. Even though I mean, it was her time. We knew it was her time. I wonder if you could see.
Oh gosh, yeah. Oh, she's beautiful.
She's so beautiful. She
Yeah,
was look,
I feel like
such a
her
little.
heart giving was she on this she's a big fluffy, but was her body smaller?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like her heart was a long process. I don't feel like it was something that came on suddenly.
No. Yeah.
And and she was what, 17? How old was she when she passed?
15. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like it had been an issue probably since she was like 11 that just went undetected for those 4 years.
Yeah, for sure.
But
Yeah.
but that was okay because there was nothing that they really could have done for it.
Mm.
It would have just knowing would have caused you more stress, and she didn't want that. So
Mm.
even though you were taking her to the vet and all the labs were fine, it obviously wasn't, and I do feel like it had been an issue for about 4 years.
Yeah,
But
makes
you
sense.
lose a cat, I asked this in the last podcast, there's somebody who lost a cat when they were around 13 years old, and it was a really traumatic experience. So I don't know if it's not you, then it's somebody who's going to be watching this podcast later, um, and that cat wants them to know they're coming back to them. So,
Oh,
how old's your daughter?
she's 20.
She's 20 now? 7
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, with her, I feel like your dog Max is coming back to her. But there's somebody out there who had a really traumatic experience with losing their cat when they were, like, 13, and
When
I
they were
feel it was a
13, yeah.
tabby.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a tough time for a girl. I feel it was female, and I think she had red hair. The daughter, the girl had red hair, and she was an only child, and this
Mm.
cat had been kind of her best friend. And at
Oh,
13, that's such a weird stage, it's such an awkward time in your life.
Yeah. Well, if you're
to
out
be
there
losing.
listening and that if you're out there listening and that's you, please do comment and let us know that you've been found. That's a beautiful message to get. I really hope that you get it. I would be devastated at 13 losing my cat. Yeah. It's a really big deal.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you for that. Because we love
absolutely.
them. We love them like they're our babies, don't we? I mean, it's yeah.
We do, and
Mm,
they depend on us so much, and they don't, obviously they don't take nearly as much as they give energetically, spiritually, emotionally. It's so much harder on them,
mm,
um, knowing that how much we're going to miss them than it is for them actually to go through the pain and if they're in pain when they
yeah,
pass. It's
yeah,
really harder for them that we're left, with that void
yeah.
because it's yeah.
Do you get a sense of, how they protect us? I've heard that cats absorb a lot of energy and, that they're really great, particularly for healers, and it's interesting because 'cause I've always had cats around me from childhood. I loved having my little dog, and I'd love to have another dog. It's just difficult at the moment, but, yeah, cats seem
Right.
important for me as a healer. So I've heard that. I wonder if you have any thoughts about that and also about dogs. Like, is there a difference in what they do energetically with us, cats versus dogs?
Yeah, I mean, there's the cliche that cats are very independent and, compared to dogs, and dogs are more needy, but they do bring us healing in very different ways, and I think
Mm,
cats have a quiet presence, so when you're doing an energy healing, they're more able to be still and be with the situation and not have it be about them. Like,
mm,
had my if Jolly had had a cat, it probably would have been in the room, maybe even curled up at my feet. Now, you've had dogs who are very calm like that. They are so much more needy, and it would be more about them. If you had a
yeah,
dog in that
true. Yeah.
feeling, it would be more about them, but
I mean, it is true. It is true what you say. And yet I have to just share this little story with you about Maxie when like, must have been, like, almost 15 years ago or, thereabouts, I did my hypnotherapy training, and I had to see X number of clients for the certification, blah, 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 and, I was a single parent at the time looking after Max, and he hated to be home alone, so I would volunteer to go to the client's house, and I'd take him with me, and he was so empathetic, when I would start to get the client relaxed and start to take them under with hypnotherapy, he would go and sit in their lap or right next to them and just be the quietest, the best little doggy. This is why I always used to say, "You are the best dog in the whole world, Max." He would just be the best therapy dog. And if they started to cry, for whatever reason, he would get even closer, crawl into their lap, and just be there for them. He was
mm,
just that beautiful presence. So yeah, he was a great therapy dog. Yeah.
uh, that's really interesting because earlier I said he was more like a cat, the way that he went off to pass away quietly. So that
Yeah.
doesn't surprise at all, where a friend of mine in Florida who's also an energy healer, when my husband and I went to her for a healing session with, she had a lady who did the bowls, the sound
Oh
bowls
yeah,
while we
yeah.
were there,
Yeah.
and she has a little scrappy dog, and he was barking at the construction workers outside, and he was jumping around, and at some point, he finally did lie down next to my husband, and they had that little male bonding, but, not at all like Max,
No.
so he was very much a little dog that thought he was a big dog, where
Yeah.
Max was more a little dog that had more cat, and it could very well be because he grew up with cats,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
kinda took on their personalities more, and, so that's interesting for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is so interesting, our animals and their little quirks and personalities. Okay, so tell us what your focus is now. What are you creating? What do you want to share? What do you want to share with people? And how can they find you?
So I'm actually working on my book, which is
Oh, yes.
Basically a memoir, but it's titled Catapult, and we keep changing the subtitle, so I won't even try to come up with it right now. But
Yeah.
titled Catapult and how basically how my near-death experience led me to a blessed life. And it really explores why was I meant to still be here? You know, why didn't I die at my first open heart surgery when I was 9 and they didn't really know what they were doing with me, or 25 or 49 years old when I had the near death experience? You really start to question, like, why did God keep me here and what's soul journey? Um, my website with my novels is Heather Hummel, Hummel, Gallagher, Gallagher, just what you see on the screen,
Yeah.
.com, and my novels are on there. So eventually, when the book launches, it'll be there. I also launched my pet reading website, the pawprintintuitive.com. So I generally use these cards, but typically if people want to email me or send me a picture of their pet or during the reading, pull them up, I tune in really well with the image of the dog. But as you saw when I pulled up this one for Max, when you said that
Mm.
he passed on a full moon.
Full moon.
So
Yeah.
those, yeah, I mean, isn't that crazy?
It's
So,
crazy.
but yeah, those are the
Yes.
two best ways to reach me. And I'm, of course, on all the social media platforms. If you just look for Heather Hummel Gallagher, they're actually linked on my website as well.
Yeah, I'll definitely put it in the show notes, and I'm guessing when your book comes out, you'll put it on your author website so people can find it
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for joining me and having this conversation, and I'll make sure everyone knows where to find you. And thanks for the messages from my fur babies. And yeah, I look forward to hearing about your book when it comes out, and definitely, shoot me an email about it, and I'll remind everyone.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks.